Good morning, everyone. My name is Courtney Pelfrey, and I am one of the assistant directors on the Career Services team. And today we are going to be talking about job search strategies. So, thank you for choosing to watch this workshop. We hope that you will find it helpful and that potentially it will spur some additional questions, which a member of our team would be more than happy to answer in a future workshop or a one-on-one appointment, which you can make through Handshake, or a myriad of other ways that you can connect with our team. So let's just jump right into things. What we're going to be covering in this workshop is a basic understanding of job markets, what we mean when we say job market. What does that include? Where do we find it? We're going to set some goals and connect our own experience to our personal job search. We're going to talk about building a network, locating opportunities, and then we're going to talk about the action steps that you can and should take to actually, pursue those opportunities. And we'll kind of close that out with just a few words on perseverance in the job search, because we know that this can be a really stressful process, and it takes a toll on people in different ways. So the first thing I want to talk about is the job market outlook. And what that means in a much simpler way is just what's happening with jobs, in the country, in the world, maybe just in the state, depending on where you're looking. And when we're talking about the job market, we mean, are folks unemployed right now? What is the employment rate? When we think about how much education we're pursuing, how does that impact unemployment rates? And what are the projections? So certainly we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know exactly what will happen with jobs in the future, but we look to experts to kind of understand their projections and then help explain that to you. So the graph that you'll see on the left-hand side of your screen, this shows median usual weekly earnings. And so we're just going to talk about that, median earnings for folks with various levels of education. Right? So you can see at the bottom, less than a high school diploma. And as you get higher and higher towards the top, all the way up to a doctoral degree, you can see, how much are folks making typically the median amount in a week. We're going to compare that on the right-hand side of the chart to the unemployment rate. And so you'll see that as folks get more and more specialized with their education or with their degree, the unemployment rate for those folks decreases. And so we point this out really just to show that, your education can really help you pursue a job or a career opportunity that you're interested in. It's not always necessary to get a higher level degree. Most of you, I would imagine right now, are pursuing your bachelor's degree. You'll notice that if you stick with a bachelor's degree, maybe you don't plan to go on to a master's or a professional degree of any kind, you'll notice you can still kind of find out what you might anticipate making. And one thing we'll talk about even more as we get into this presentation is that really varies industry to industry. So this is just the median weekly earnings. The other thing I want to talk about is that employment is projected to grow between 2019 and 2029. And this is great news for all of you listening, because probably you're planning to enter the labor market between the years of 2019 and 2029 if you haven't entered it already. And we are expecting to see a rebound in hiring this year in 2021 from last year by 7.2%. Where are we getting that number from? That particular statistic is coming from NACE, which is the National Association of Colleges and Employers. And so that NACE surveys employers from across industries, across locations. So it really is a great kind of pool of employers saying that they do plan to hire more this year. And again, we hope, and Bureau of Labor Statistics projects that will continue to grow even more through 2029. So that is great news. There should be more jobs next year than there are this year, and so on and so forth. Right now, the average hourly wage for a bachelor's level intern is $20.76. That's for 2021. And so, we point this out again, just to kind of give you an estimate, an idea, without getting too specific into one particular industry, of what a college level intern might be making right now for an hourly wage. So now that we have a little bit of the landscape, I want to talk more personally. Imagine that you and I are sitting kind of across the desk from each other, and we can kind of consider your own personal feelings about your career path, the job search in general. The first thing we always want you to consider are things like your values, your interests, your personality. What skills do you have or strengths? What's your current lifestyle? What do you hope that your lifestyle would be in the future? What is your current education level? And do you plan to pursue, like we talked about before, additional education that may help you, even further clarify your career goals or step into a career that requires a higher level of education or experience? It's important to consider these things first because the job search can be extremely daunting. There are millions and millions, if not billions, of jobs out there that you could apply to, but we want to help you be strategic about what you're applying to, where you're looking, where you're focusing your time and energy. And so it's important that you consider, first of all, what are you looking for and how might that complement the things that you really value? Do you value, sort of a work life balance above all else? Do you value a salary above all else? And when you think about interests, are you interested in really working with people? Is that a big interest of yours? Or perhaps you're really not interested in working closely with others. Maybe your interest is, in very autonomous work. You're very independent. That starts to play into your personality, the things that you're good at, and so on and so forth. So some things to consider as we jump into this. Now, how do your preferences match up to the current job market? So it's important to kind of keep a keen eye on what's happening. Some ways that you can do this relatively simply are just to do kind of a very basic job search on an engine like LinkedIn or Indeed or using Handshake, which is UCF's platform for job search. And you can kind of, get an idea of what's out there right now. Do you see a lot of one type of job? What kinds of needs are you seeing from employers? How does that align with what you bring to the table? And then you've got to start to prioritize. What are my non-negotiables in the job search? Maybe location is a non-negotiable factor for you. I absolutely want to stay in the Orlando area, or I am only willing to move to Southern California. Well, if that is a top priority, then we're really going to have to start to think about how can you be flexible with some other things so that you can truly make that your priority in your career plan. We also want to help you develop a target list of employers. So what we want to think about there is, are there already companies that you're familiar with, that you know about, that you say, I already have kind of this idea that it would be really great to work for XYZ organization. If you don't have that right now, if you can't think off the top of your head about, particular employers that you'd like to work for, it's a really good idea to start doing some research in the industry of your choice, or perhaps you have a couple of different industries that you're looking at. Do some research on who are the top employers in that space, or maybe it's locationally. If I want to stay in Central Florida in healthcare, I need to understand who are the major healthcare players in Central Florida, because that's going to look very different than the major healthcare players in, Columbus, Ohio, and it's going to look very different in, Maine. And so you can do that research in a myriad of different ways as well. So places like LinkedIn are great for finding that information. Again, Bureau of Labor Statistics will be really informative about what's happening in the market within a given field or job title. And this is also what we're here to help with, right? So our career services team is happy to sit down with you to talk a little bit more strategically about what you're looking at, who you're looking for, and how you can make some of those, kind of priorities or think about your priorities and then make adjustments to your plans. So where do we even look for jobs, right? That's obviously a huge piece of the puzzle, is where do we start? Oftentimes when I sit down with a student and I ask them where they've been searching, the most common answers I hear are places like Indeed and Monster. And that's not necessarily, a bad place to start. It's definitely going to give you kind of an indication of what's out there. But when we think about the job market, most of us are only accessing right now what we call the open job market. And when you look at the circle on the screen, that's that very outer white band that says general public. Those are the jobs in what we consider the open job market. That's going to be things that are posted online, things that are posted, widely on company websites, LinkedIn, Handshake, Indeed, Monster, USA Jobs. So those are available to the general public. Anyone can search for them. Typically anyone can apply for them. It's kind of your baseline level of knowledge. Now, you'll notice that that is the smallest portion of the circle as a whole. And this whole circle represents what we consider to be the job market. So how do we access this hidden job market in yellow? And what do we even mean by hidden job market? Hidden job market means we are going to have to do a little bit more work to access these jobs. However, you'll notice that the closer you get to the center of the circle, the closer you are to who is actually going to be making the hiring decision. And that is where you want to be. We want to get you as close to the center of that circle as we can, because that's going to give you the highest likelihood of being interviewed, of being selected, of really getting to know an organization and its people. So in the referrals category, we think about this as kind of networking. So who do we know? And it's not just who do we know, but it's who knows us. Have we been introducing ourselves to folks in the field? Have we been asking to make connections with our peers, our colleagues, our classmates, our faculty members, our supervisors? And can they refer us to additional people who may have good information and insight? We want to go ahead and be kind of breaking into this hidden market, and we want to be breaking into the organizations that we're interested in. So just as an example, we'll use a big name that everyone will recognize. If I really want to work for Google, certainly I could look up jobs at Google on the internet, and I would find, different opportunities that Google had posted on various job platforms. That information is the open job market. It's available to the general public. However, I'm going to really help my chances of getting hired by Google if I can get a referral within Google first. So, there's, again, different ways to go about this. Maybe I already know someone who's worked for or interned for Google. I would probably want to start with that person and ask them, could you make an introduction for me to somebody within my field at Google? Or if not, do you know somebody who might be able to do that? That's basic networking. It's making relationships, building relationships, and staying in communication with people, kind of telling your story to get to know more about others. Now, let's say you don't know somebody who already works for Google. LinkedIn is a great way to find referrals and to make connections. You can look for UCF alumni specifically who work for Google. There's a really easy way to search for that in LinkedIn. And so maybe that's the way that you kind of break into that hidden job market. Now, as we get even closer to the center, you'll see decision maker. This is, again, a result of networking. So we want to be networking to the point where we are meeting the folks within an organization that are actually making the decision. They will actually be directly responsible for hiring us, right? That is, of course, what we want. And so the closer we get to that decision maker, if we are meeting those people, again, the better chance we have of being hired or being really strongly considered. So this is all about meeting people. A huge part of your job search is not going to happen on the internet. It's not going to happen, in Indeed or Monster. It's not going to happen just by filling out a job application. Again, you hear this phrase, it's who you know, but we want you to think of it more as who knows you. Who knows your story, who's seen your resume, who has had a chance to maybe meet you via an informational interview, which we'll talk even more about. But that's how I want you to think about the job market. There are a lot of opportunities out there, and they might not be posted yet, but somebody knows about them, or somebody knows, that their position will be vacant in 6 months or 3 months. So the more you're able to talk to folks with kind of that insider VIP knowledge, the better. Now, back to kind of the open job market, and we've touched on some of these things already, but places that are great to look, because we don't want to steer you away from the open job market. It's still important to understand what jobs are out there so that certainly you can apply for them. But Handshake, we always recommend starting with Handshake because our team in Career Services actually takes the time to vet and manage all of these employers. So if an employer requests to join our Handshake network, we make sure that they are not fraudulent, that it's not going to be a scam for our students. And similarly, once they're approved and they ask to post a job or an internship, We vet all of those jobs and internships to protect you, our students. So Handshake's an awesome place to start, but also company websites. Let's say there's an employer that maybe isn't connected with us on Handshake yet, and you're still really interested in their work. That's great. Check out their company website. Most companies have a jobs tab on their own site or a careers tab, and that's where you can find their openings. Depending on your industry, there may be other really important sites or databases to check out. And again, one of our career counselors can help you walk you through this even more specifically. But for example, if you're thinking about a government job, you'd want to be looking at usajobs.gov. That's a very specific job search engine for government jobs. Professional organizations also kind of are really well tapped into these industry specific databases. So let's say that you're a part of a professional association or, the student chapter of a professional organization. Make sure that you're looking at their website and understanding, are they posting jobs on behalf of their professional membership, their organizations who are members. But it's, the underlying thing here is only about 20% of jobs are going to be found in this open market. So on these, various industry sites, websites. So it's not a bad thing. It's a great start. But if you're feeling frustrated and discouraged because you've applied to some things online, you haven't heard back, I want you to consider that you're potentially missing out on 80% of the opportunities by not leveraging that next step of the hidden job market, really talking to people, getting information, and networking. So let's talk a little bit more about that. Networking can seem really daunting. We know that that's true. We know that it's kind of a buzzword. We all hear networking and we think, oh gosh, that means I'm going to have to put on a suit and go shake people's hands at a big event. It's fancy. But anyone can start networking right away, right now. You begin with the people you already know, your family members, your friends, your classmates, your faculty members. Do they know you? Do they really know you? Do they know you professionally? That's what we want to kind of focus on. Have they ever seen your resume? Do they know what some of your professional goals are? Do they know what types of organizations you're interested in? What industries you're interested in? If you haven't told people these things, they can't be working on your behalf. They can't be connecting you to the right people because they probably don't know who the right people are. So go through your contact information and make sure that your personal connections have kind of this narrative of what your professional goals are. And then think about developing a list of other people that you want to connect with. So can your family members introduce you to their colleagues, their coworkers, their network connections? Can students in class connect you with their internship employers or other folks that, maybe they're working with that they feel like, wow, this is a really great company culture. I think you'd really love it. Alumni, we don't often, I think, give alumni enough credit for being a great networking tool for us. So, think about, you have something in common already. So obviously I know that not everyone knows every single UCF alumni. There are, hundreds of thousands of UCF alumni. But when you narrow it down to the UCF alumni pool, you already have something in common, and it's UCF. So even if you're reaching out to someone you don't know, let's say via LinkedIn, as long as you're explaining where you found them, how you found them, and what you're interested in chatting about, lead with what you have in common, and typically they are going to be so willing to connect with you. Talk to friends, we talked about relatives, professors, supervisors, ask them who they would encourage you to connect with. Especially your faculty. We don't often think about our faculty as being these wealths of knowledge in the industries that they represent. We know that they know their subjects well, but many times our faculty members have been out there in the industry and they've got lots of great networking connections that they would be more than happy to share with their students. So just make sure you're tapping into these various pools. So what are some other networking strategies? While you're a student, some easy ways to plug into networking are to join professional and campus organizations. So are you a member of any student organizations already? Are you a member of any student organizations that relate directly to your professional goals? And there's a myriad of different ways to do that. If you visit osi.ucf.edu, you can see a full list of all of the registered student organizations, and that will include professional organizations as well that you can join, student membership. So that's, one great way. Thinking about getting experience, that's great networking. So can you job shadow? Can you identify somebody who's doing something that you're curious about? Could you shadow them for a day or a week? Could you do an externship or an internship? Is there a mentorship program that you could join? If not, could you find an informal mentor, somebody who you look up to who would be willing to chat with you on a regular basis about your career and professional goals to help you identify action steps for how you can really take next steps in your career? Do you think about social media for networking? I've mentioned LinkedIn several times. We've got to remember that that's what LinkedIn was designed for. LinkedIn is designed to be professional social media that you can use to connect with folks in fields that you're interested in, to get information that might help you leverage your own career. And in turn, we want to think about, you'll pay that forward when you have advice to share with others and they reach out to you asking for your advice. You'll be willing to do that because that's what LinkedIn is there for. LinkedIn is a wealth of knowledge and information, not just for searching for jobs and doing research on companies, but again, just the UCF alumni database that's available there is so robust. Informational interviews. I mentioned this before, but this is the idea really of just connecting with folks who are doing something that you're interested in to ask them questions. I know when we hear the word interview, we start to get, a little bit anxious sometimes, and we think, oh, I don't want to do any interviews if I don't have to. Informational interviewing is just asking questions. It's just an informal conversation. It's you interviewing someone else about how they like their job, what's good about it, what's bad about it, how long have they been there, what's the culture like, what are they looking to hire, do they have open positions? So it's informational, just like the name says. And again, you're going to want to do this as much as possible. My biggest recommendation to students in the job search is set a goal for yourself of how many informational interviews you'd like to complete each week. When I was a graduate student, I set a goal that I wanted to do at least 2 informational interviews every week. And one of those informational interviews directly led to my first job out of school. Attend conferences. So I know right now travel, might not be our top priority, or not everyone's hosting in-person, conferences, but there's also a lot of virtual professional development you can take advantage of as well. And oftentimes conferences will have networking sessions, which are specifically designed for you to get to meet other folks in the field. So that is a great way, again, to virtually shake hands, and to be able to tell your story to folks. Again, remember that networking is just relationship building. I know it sounds much more intimidating than that, but networking is you telling your story to someone else and identifying your professional goals and asking someone else to share their story with you and what their professional journey has been. Now, we also do a lot of work on campus to help provide opportunities to you, our students, to get recruited by companies who are looking for you. Again, Handshake is going to be the first place that we're always going to recommend that you check. Our employer partners have access to post events on Handshake. And so those might be recruiting events, they might be employer-led workshops, information sessions. And so make sure you're checking the Handshake calendar frequently, as well as reading the Handshake emails that you get from your designated career services liaison. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you might want to check your spam folder, because chances are, if you haven't seen that coming through, you are getting an email, but it's maybe being filtered to the wrong folder. So we'll also send other targeted emails about really big events that are coming up. Things like Career Expo, which happen in the fall and the spring. We've got a statewide career fair that we're a part of every summer. Employers are constantly doing things on campus. And I think a lot of students don't realize just how often employers are here, and they wouldn't be spending their time and money recruiting on our campus unless they were really serious about you as our candidates. They really want to hire you. So make sure you're attending all of these great events that we have access to. I mentioned expos and job fairs. We also have some smaller job fairs that are industry specific. So for example, we have an education job fair. We have a Rosen job fair for hospitality students. So there are different ways to plug in. I sound like a broken record here sometimes, but you've got to read your emails to know about a lot of these things. And then we want you to be gaining experience. Once you've identified companies you'd like to work for or jobs that you'd like to apply to, we still have to be able to tell a future employer of ours, I have the skills you're looking for, right? So a big piece of this is that hopefully, as you've been a student, you've been finding ways to build experience, build skills. So that might have been through internships, whether paid or unpaid. Employers typically don't care too much whether you've been paid to do something. They just care, do you have the skill sets we need for our job? Experiential learning is a great place to check for some of these things initially. So thinking about, service learning is maybe one that you hear less about, but is still a great way to get experience. But experiential learning does both internships, service learning. They handle the Knights of Distinction program. And so they're a great kind of our partner office to check out. Volunteering. A lot of people don't think of volunteering as really important experience, but volunteering is awesome because you are out there making a difference, typically in your own community, and you're getting hands-on skills and experience. You're not being paid for it, but like I mentioned, employers want to see a well-rounded student. They want to see someone who has, excelled in their coursework. Certainly, we know that you're a student first, but also that somebody that has taken the time outside of their coursework to find ways to plug in, get involved, give back. Temporary and seasonal work, so maybe you have a part-time or a full-time job. Maybe you haven't been able to find those opportunities, but you've been able to shadow. In some industries like healthcare, shadowing is much more common because it's harder to get a part-time job or an internship in something like healthcare where maybe you don't have the correct credentials to be getting that hands-on experience quite yet. Shadowing is the next best option. And joining student organizations. We've already touched on this a little bit, but taking on roles in student organizations can certainly help to build your leadership, your communication, your problem solving. But even if you don't take on a leadership role, it shows that you can commit to something that's outside of your coursework, that you can, you've found time for another priority to build your professional development, to connect with peers, that kind of thing. What are the kind of main skills that an employer would be looking for? So we talk about getting experience, and sometimes students will say, well, what type of experience should I be getting? If I'm going to look for an internship or I'm going to look for a volunteering opportunity, what should I be trying to get out of that? And that's a great question. What you're going to see on your screen here are 8 competencies, and by competency, we kind of mean skill set. And these are defined again by that National Association of Colleges Employers, NACE. And they survey employers from across industry, across the world, and they say, what are you hoping to hire? If you're going to hire, somebody who's a recent grad, what do you hope that their resume and their interview tells you about them? And these are the 8 things, the 8 competencies that employers say they need you to bring to the table to show that you're career ready. You'll be able to jump in and perform. And so what's interesting, and probably you've already noticed as you're looking at these are not industry specific. These are pretty broad, but this goes for any industry. Any industry is going to want to hire leaders. They're going to want to hire folks who have strong communication skills. They want to hire critical thinkers, folks with a real emphasis on equity and inclusion, people who have a great understanding of technology and how to leverage it, people who can work in teams, people who are professional, people who have a good awareness of their own career and self-development. So somebody who's thought through their goals, they know what their own strengths and weaknesses are. So again, I hope that this empowers you to kind of feel like, wow, I'm already building these things. And again, there's no one right way to build these things. Maybe it's through an internship, maybe it's through a part-time job, maybe it's through, service learning, volunteering, shadowing, whatever it might be. It's being able to explain and quantify these things on a resume and in an interview so that when you are telling someone your story, you're providing that professional narrative, it's really easy for them to understand how you will be a great asset to their organization because you can seamlessly transfer these skills, these competencies to their organization. Now it's time to take action. So I know that this may seem like, wow, I've got a lot to work on, and I won't sugarcoat it. It can be a daunting process. We've mentioned before, I know that this can sound stressful, it's time consuming, but if you are doing it well, we often say the job search will feel like a full-time job in and of itself. That doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It probably means you're doing something right. So diversify your strategies. Talk to people online, talk to people in person, attend events, go to conferences, pursue professional development, get hands-on experience. The more that you diversify the ways that you are kind of embracing that professional career, the better, the more effective your search will be. Don't just look on one website, look on several websites. Don't just talk to 2 people, talk to 20 people. Use as many of your resources as possible. I consider career services to be one of your greatest resources. You've got this team of us who, we are here specifically to support you in this process. We want to support you in this process. So take advantage of our knowledge and our availability. Also be realistic about your timeline. So, know that the average job search does take 3 to 6 months. And so if you're graduating in a week, it's not realistic to expect that you'll have a job in a week before you graduate. The hiring process alone oftentimes takes 3 to 6 months. So it's important also to stay organized. Again, I know this is a lot of information. Keep a detailed spreadsheet for yourself. Where are you applying? So, name of the organization. Have you made contact with them? If so, who? What date did you apply? What did you submit? When will you follow up? When do you expect to hear back? Keep that information. I've heard from students before who have gotten phone calls, and the phone call will say, hey, this is Courtney, and I'm calling about the application that you submitted, and I'd love to schedule an interview. And you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, I've submitted 400 applications. I have no idea who's calling me. And so it's important to keep really close track of where am I applying, what's their phone number, what's their contact information, what's the title of the job, because somebody might call and say, I'm applying about the human resources assistant role. Okay, well, where did I apply for a human resources assistant role? When did I do that? Who did I talk to? You've also got to be actively marketing yourself. Don't expect that employers will come to you. You're in a unique situation as a college student where oftentimes they sort of will come to you on campus, and that's why it's so important to be active in Handshake and reading your emails. But that's not always the outside world, the reality. So you've got to be actively marketing yourself and pursuing the employers. And that starts with maintaining a really professional online presence. That includes your LinkedIn profile and any social media that you have out there. Anything you post online is pretty easily accessible by any employer who wants to find it. And they'll go looking for it to see, are you the type of person that we want to hire? Your resume and cover letter. These are documents that are ever living. They're always in progress, I say. As you develop new skills, make sure you're going back and revisiting them and editing them and updating them, but also have our team critique them for you. We don't expect you to all of a sudden wake up and be a resume and cover letter expert, but that's what we're here for. Same thing with your interviewing skills. Perhaps you're not the most confident. We've got tools to help you really practice and hone your interviewing skills. And you don't need to wait until you have an interview scheduled to be building those skills. You can be building them the whole time. Take advantage of the time you have before this kind of season of heavy interviewing might really start. So again, Career Services is here to help with all of that. We've got additional workshops, not just this one, but workshops about some of these other topics that we've talked about. So maybe you want to learn more specifically about LinkedIn. Maybe you want to learn more specifically about networking. We've got workshops for those things. We've got resume workshops. We've got one-on-one appointments. Employers come in to talk about all of these topics as well. So it would be great to hear it from an employer too. So, kind of our little pep talk here at the end. I mentioned that looking for a full-time job can and probably will feel like a full-time job itself. And so that is okay. It does require your daily attention. You need to be checking your email every day. I know that might be new for some of you, but that is really imperative. Don't lose hope. It can be a really frustrating process because realistically, you will get a lot more no's probably than you get yeses, but you just need one yes from a company that you really are excited about. And don't take the rejections personally. You have no idea. Maybe the company has, instead of you, they've hired somebody who's already been working for them for 5 years. You won't know that, but it's important to keep things in perspective and know that they're not saying that you're not a good person. They may just be saying you're not the right person for this job. Stay connected to folks who can support you. So make sure you're taking really good care of yourself. Again, it maybe sounds silly when we're talking about the job search, but make sure you're getting rest and that you're eating well and that you're doing things for self-care. You're plugged into a community that can help to kind of support you as well. But I promise you that hard work will pay off. So, taking this diverse approach that we've been outlining will truly help you to kind of get the best results possible. So some kind of last minute reminders. You know, we've touched on all of these things, but do consider and utilize all of your strategies, develop and stay in touch with, nurture your network. You've got to devote adequate time, energy, and effort to this. Make it a priority in your week. Set some goals for yourself. Treat it like another class where you've got homework, you've got daily work that you need to do. Be out there looking for ways to gain experience. Employers want folks with those 8 career competencies. They want people with a resume full of experience. Participate in on-campus recruiting activities. So take advantage of the employers who are literally knocking on our door saying, how can I hire UCF students? Be in Handshake daily if you can. Don't spend all your time seeking positions just in the open job market. You know, if Indeed is your only job search tool, you're probably not having a ton of luck right now. And that doesn't mean you're necessarily looking in the wrong place, but you're not looking in enough places. Don't ignore opportunities posted on Handshake. Again, we're going through all of those, and an employer wouldn't be posting them unless they specifically were seeking UCF students. It's very tailored to you. Don't become discouraged because of unrealistic expectations. We've talked about that. And don't overlook any opportunities. Try and say yes to things that interest you and see where it leads. Get to know people, and even if their industry is slightly different than what you've been kind of thinking about, take the time to informationally interview them and find out, you know, what is this all about? How might my skill set, you know, really connect well in this field? So that is kind of the end of our presentation today. I hope that you got something out of that. I hope you learned something new. And I hope that maybe it sparked some questions for you that now we can continue to connect in other workshops or in advising meetings, one-on-one appointments, where we can continue to help build for you a really strategic, personalized strategy, because this is going to look different for everyone. So on the screen, you'll see a bunch of different ways to connect with us. Please, you know, follow our social media, email us if you need anything. But we're here, and we wish you the best of luck as you go on and kind of conquer your own job searches. Have a wonderful rest of your day, everyone.